Hi, this is Ken Mary from Flotsam and Jetsam, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast with Bruce Moore. So check it out.
I think what I was going to say is I think the last time I saw you was, the last show I saw probably, well, one of them was you guys on 70,000 Tons.
Yep.
That was like just before this whole thing shut down.
Yep. And actually that was our last official show that we played at together.
Really?
Yep.
So it's over a year then. Way over a year.
Yeah. It's a year and a half since we played. Yeah.
Wow. What's it like having all that time off? I mean, obviously you worked on the record and I'm imagining there was different writing processes for this, but what was that whole experience like?
Well, it was pretty weird because we did have in Arizona at the time we were making this record, we had one of the worst outbreaks in the entire world. We had, in terms of infections per capita, Arizona was like one of the worst hit places in the world. Right. And it did affect us personally. AK's mother was in the hospital for 8 weeks and she almost didn't make it. We had 2 guys in the band get sick. One of them took about 5 weeks to recover fully. And then another guy was sick for about 5 days. We had to have photos taken, where people were sick and we had to socially distance during the photos. And
right.
For the recording, for instance, while AK was recording his vocals, we did that at my studio, which is where we recorded the drums and the vocals and that kind of thing. So, I was in the control room and he was in the tracking room and we'd look at each other through the glass and wave hello, and that's all.
So weird, right?
That's how we would see each other, because we all have elderly parents we're trying to protect. And, it was a weird time and it was strange. It obviously felt strange. We were very frustrated. And I think some of the anger and angst and frustration and some of the sadness and all of these things, all of these emotions were just kind of poured into this record. And I think, honestly, it probably made for one of the most angry, aggressive, and maybe one of the, I think it's one of the best Flotsam albums ever, in my opinion, and I've been a fan for years. Like my favorite albums are the first 2 albums and the last 3 albums. I love the last 3 and the first 2.
Right.
And so I know it's weird for me to say this as part of the band, but I normally can't listen to a record that I've been involved in the production in for, when you, by the time it's out, I've heard the songs, over 200 times a piece. And, to have an album completed where I can still take the CD and enjoy listening to it in my car is a very unusual thing. And that's the way this album is for me.
That's good. And I know we were just talking about, this whole pandemic thing. I think metal, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, might be one of the only genres where you can get away with channeling all that anger and make it a cathartic experience at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely. It was a complete cathartic experience. It's like, I think we all poured everything, that we were feeling into the record. And I think it made for a very powerful album. I mean, there's songs that, AK wrote Cry for the Dead, and you just listen to those lyrics and it's like, oh my gosh, very moving lyrics on this album and a very powerful record. I'm very, very proud of it, as you could probably tell.
Oh yeah.
It's just sometimes you do records and, we were so worried about it because The End of Chaos was, we really poured ourselves into that album and we thought that was like an amazingly strong record. And we were like, how in the heck are we going to even, we have to at least equal this record. And so, that was our goal when we started. We were like, we gotta at least get as good as The End of Chaos. And then, I feel like we topped it. I feel like we actually went beyond it. And it seems like the response from the press and radio and everybody that's heard it so far seems to have that same response. Like, wow, you guys really found another gear and took it up a notch. And so, for us, that's just like, that was amazing. Cause we were concerned.
Yeah. So do you find this is record 14, I believe I saw. Do you find it difficult not writing the same record when it comes to sitting down to write a record? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I do think it is certainly a concern. You have to recognize like, oh, we already did that. And you certainly want to grow and change. And at the same time, you don't want to alienate the people from the things that make Flotsam Flotsam.
Right.
And so it is a fine line that you walk. I mean, we're somewhat aware of it, but on the last two albums in particular, we took a new tack, which was really, don't worry about anything. Just worry about making music that you love and that moves you personally. And I'm talking about all the writers in the band, which is all of us. We all write and we all contribute to the writing. And in that process, the whole idea was like, let's not put one song on the album that we don't all love. If we all love every song on the album, then we win. And, it's pretty funny. We did that with The End of Chaos and we did that with this album. And so far, it seems like the trajectory of the band is really moving forward. And I just think that's an interesting development. I was just doing an interview where the guy said, what would you tell to a young Ken Mary as far as advice? And I said, well, I would tell him to follow his heart and don't worry about, radio or what the label says or what the other people say, just do music that moves you. Because I think when you do that, something kind of magical happens, like if the music moves you, then hopefully, there's a few million people out there that agree with you.
And it'll connect. Do you, shoot, I just lost my train of thought. I just totally blipped out there for a second. We were talking about.
Yeah, we're just talking about the music moving, us personally, and if it makes.
Oh, I knew what I was going to say. I got it. Thank you. You jarred my memory again. So, if you're only picking the ones that you guys are all loving, are there like a bunch of other ones that just get clipped along the way, or are you just writing those 8 and you just love them?
No, there's a bunch that got clipped. There's a lot of material that's sitting kind of on the back, burner, and usually there was something wrong with the song that we may or may not be able to go fix. Like there were certain songs that didn't make it, that almost didn't make it on this record. I'll give you a good, for instance, "Blood in the Water" was a song that AK had, and for some reason he wasn't really feeling anything. It wasn't really moving him. So I just took it and wrote, the lyrics, the melody, and and it turned out, where we played it for everybody, and we already had pretty much the whole album done, and Mike Gilbert and AK were like, man, we got to put this on the album. This is a crushing song. We've got to include it, and we already had so many killer songs, and so it was funny, that everybody recognized, wow, this is a killer track. We have to include it. So. Yeah, there are songs that don't make it. That song almost didn't make it onto the record, and it by chance, it did, and it ended up becoming the title track. So it's like one of those things where, it's a very interesting process. But I think the cool thing is that everybody just wanted great songs on the album, and they didn't really care. A lot of times in bands, you get a lot of infighting. One guy wants his song, the other guy wants his song. I think in this band, it's truly a team effort. And, there's so many different writing patterns. Like, AK wrote songs with Steve, and Steve wrote songs with, or I wrote songs with Steve, and AK and I wrote songs with Steve, and Mike Gilbert and I wrote songs, and Mike Gilbert and AK wrote songs, and then Mike, AK and I wrote songs. So,
right.
So there's huge combinations of different people working together to create stuff. And somehow it all still sounds like Flotsam. So it was a very wild chemistry that we kind of feel like we sort of stumbled on.
That's excellent. What's the I know with things opening up now, what's like your plan for shows or any kind of live events, or is that not a thing yet?
No, it is. We're going to try to go out. We're trying to do a 2-week run in the U.S. in August and just kind of see how that goes. If it goes, then we may extend it. We're obviously paying close attention to what's going on in India. India's having a really bad outbreak right now.
Right.
And that's really more of a second wave. The virus had already been through there once already. So we're keeping, kind of an eye. I talked to somebody in the UK and they said the Indian variant's already over there.
Oh, really?
So, Yeah, so we don't know exactly what's going to go on, but we do have shows scheduled in August, and then in Europe, we're scheduled in 2022, and obviously all the festivals and everything. But we're certainly hopeful. I mean, if you look at the vaccines, we're looking in Arizona, and a lot of people have been vaccinated, and our cases are very, very low right now. So hopefully that continues, and there's not something new that shows up on the horizon. I mean, that's our ideally we're going to get back to touring and playing shows and get back to our, we were doing, like 8-week runs instead of,
right.
2-week runs. So hopefully we can get back to doing that kind of thing soon.
You think it's going to be difficult to get back out after a year and a half of inactivity?
I don't think so. I mean, I do think that we're going to have to get in shape. I mean, I've had to pretty much stay in shape this whole time just to do the record and, do the different things that I do. I kind of have to stay in shape. But in terms of as a band, I will tell you this: playing Flotsam music it's not like you could not play for a year and then just jump up on stage and play these songs.
Right.
I mean, you have to totally be in shape. AK's got to get his voice in shape. The guitar players have to get their riffs in shape because, it's a workout playing this stuff, and it requires a tremendous amount of energy. And if you're rusty, it's just not going to work. So I will say this: yes, we will definitely have to make sure we're all in shape before we hit the road.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get your tour legs back at some point, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Do you ever imagine you'd still be doing this? I mean, 14 albums later, however many years that translates to. I mean, I remember listening to Flotsam way back in the day, dating myself. But do you ever imagine you'd still be doing this?
Honestly, not really. I mean, because when you're young, you always think, well, our careers will be over by the time we're, 25 or
right.
30. Like you're always,
right.
because that's kind of the way it was for most music. I mean, if you look at pop stars and all the one-hit wonders and all the people that have like one record and then they're done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's tons and tons and tons of examples in the music business of that. So when somebody says, would you expect to be doing this, this at this late, time in your career? And the answer is no, not really, but we're really happy. I mean, what we're looking at is, and I've said this in other interviews, but, if you look at Motorhead, for instance, they're a band that they were always around. They were always kind of iconic, but they really didn't have a big impact or a big boost in their career till the last few years of their career. And so we're kind of looking at it like maybe we can pull a Motorhead and, and have a career where, we have a bigger career at the end of the career than we did at the beginning. That's what we're hoping for.
That's fantastic. But I feel like you guys have always had sort of I don't want to say cult following, but a solid following in the underground for sure, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The band's definitely had an underground following, but, hopefully, we're going to expand that following. It certainly seems like we're doing that with the last 3 albums. I mean, the last 3 albums in particular seem to be like a little bit of a rebirth for the band. And, people are just, excited about the music and about the new songs and about the new albums. And, it's almost like you're a new artist kind of. So, we're hoping to just continue carrying that energy. And like I said, hopefully we can pull a Motorhead.
That's great. So I've got one more for you. What's it like playing shows where people like myself are bringing their kids to the shows? I imagine you're getting like multiple generations, right?
Yeah, we are, and to that degree, I mean, if you listen to Flotsam lyrics, things are generally very clean. I mean, there's really not a lot of, there's not a lot of vulgarity and stuff. So most kids, I think, would be fine, at a Flotsam show. I mean, they're probably going to hear an F-bomb or two from AK, you know. But I'd say for the most part, it's not like going to a Rammstein show or something like that.
Right.
It's going to be fairly friendly. So, we don't really have a problem with the generational thing. As a matter of fact, we do see that. We do see people bringing fairly young kids to the shows and stuff. And, it's always a little bit of a shock because you kind of go like, well, make sure they wear earplugs,
right.
Because, it's not something, when you're a kid and you're 10 or 11 years old, you don't want to be exposed to these high volumes without some hearing protection. But other than that, I think I feel good. I feel good about it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool that you've been around long enough and you've got a fan base that's strong enough that they're bringing the next generation to you and turning them on to, great music.
Absolutely.
That's always interesting to me. And I see that with some of the other bigger bands as well. And I'm bringing my kids to shows for the last few years, and it's the same sort of, well, not last year, but you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's the same sort of thing. And it's kind of cool, bringing them to that sort of stuff. And you're right. And you're right about the vulgarity and stuff. I mean, you might be one of the few exceptions I can think of that aren't, dropping F-bombs or dealing with really, really, really dark subject matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We're not a band. I think if you look at our lyrics, they're generally very thoughtful and very thought provoking. So,
yeah.
I think that's that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for young people too to think about things and think about their world and where it's headed and what's going on in it. And I think that's important.
Awesome, Ken. That is all I have. Did I miss anything you want to cover?
Well, just like to say, to all our people, all our fans, and certainly the people that are, listening to your show, that, we hope that you are all safe and healthy and happy, and we certainly hope to see you very soon on tour.
Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Stay safe out there. Yeah, stay safe, and I hope to catch you somewhere again here in the U.S.
Thanks so much, Bruce, and hope to see you soon.
Be well, my friend. Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.